The Illusion of a Father, a Judge Judy, Story of Deception, Deliberate Sabotage, and a Sperm Donor's Claim. The air in the television courtroom was thin and cold, charged with the tension you could taste, a metallic blend of old resentments and fresh, sharp anger, and all of it was focused on the three figures standing before the bench. A stern-faced Judge Judy, a confident, almost smug Mr. Ezra Masters, and a visibly frustrated Ms. Chloe Martin. This wasn't just a dispute over money. It was the explosive culmination of a relationship that had soured into a bitter war over a single, innocent soul, their 3.5-year-old daughter, a little girl caught in the crossfire of her parents' animosity. The case began with a simple, stark claim from Judge Judy, her voice cutting through the heavy silence like a laser. Mr. Masters, you and Ms. Martin have a child together, and it is your claim that Ms. Martin purposely sabotaged a planned visitation. She laid out the heart of the matter with brutal clarity, and as a result of that, you were unable to visit with your daughter when you traveled to see her, and you want Ms. Martin to compensate you for the travel expenses that you incurred during that visit. That's what your case is about. But even as she spoke, her tone hinted at a deep skepticism, a sense that the surface of this story was about to be peeled back to reveal something far more complicated and far less flattering to the man who had brought the suit. Ms. Chloe Martin, the defendant, stood her ground, her posture rigid with a mixture of defiance and weariness. She had heard this all before, lived through the chaos that was co-parenting with Ezra Masters. Her counterclaim, as Judge Judy immediately pointed out, was dismissed as ridiculous and silly by the no-nonsense judge. But the real drama, the true suspense, lay in unraveling the timeline of deceit, poor decisions, and emotional negligence that had led them to this moment. The first critical piece of the puzzle was the child herself, almost 4 years old, a toddler whose life had been a geographic tug-of-war. Ezra Masters now lived in Dallas, Texas, having moved there just 3 months prior for work and a better lifestyle. A decision he made unilaterally, a fact that Judge Judy immediately pounced on with the precision of a hawk spotting a mouse in a field. He had abandoned the crowded competition of Los Angeles, California, where Ms. Chloe Martin still resided, and in doing so, he had physically placed a massive, daunting distance between himself and his little girl. The history, as Judge Judy began to excavate it, was a tangled web. The child had been born, not in California, but in Maryland, because Chloe Martin had left Los Angeles to be with her family during her pregnancy. Ezra Masters admitted they had never lived together, not even during the pregnancy, a fact that painted a picture of a relationship that was fragile and temporary from the start. Yet, he had traveled to Maryland to meet his daughter, and for a fleeting moment, things seemed reasonable, though both parties quickly corrected that optimistic assessment with a curt, synchronized, not really. This was the first crack in the foundation, the initial sign that this was not a story of a happy, accidental family, but rather a contractual arrangement of parenthood gone terribly wrong. There had been a court action, initiated by Ezra Masters himself, to establish custody and visitation, resulting in a judicial order from Maryland. Judge Judy, her eyes sharp and missing nothing, demanded to see this order, this foundational document that was supposed to govern their fractured family dynamics. The production of this paperwork became a scene of palpable confusion and frustration, with Ezra and Chloe talking over each other, presenting different documents from different dates and jurisdictions. Maryland, then a filing in Los Angeles in July, creating a chaotic paper trail that mirrored the chaos of their co-parenting. The planned visitation at the center of the storm was for the weekend of August 18th. Ezra Masters, from his new home in Texas, believed he was acting pursuant to the order of visitation then in place. But which order? This was the million-dollar question, the legal and emotional knot that Judge Judy had to untangle. The Maryland order, the original one, stipulated that Ezra was entitled to 48-hour visits, but with a crucial, deal-breaking condition. He had to give Ms. Chloe Martin a full 30 days' notice of his intention to exercise that visitation. Judge Judy, holding the document in her hand, turned her piercing gaze back to Ezra Masters. "I'm not hearing that you gave the defendant 30 days' notice," she stated, her voice dropping into a lower, more dangerous register. The suspense built as she outlined the proper procedure, the path a responsible, dedicated father would have taken. You send a registered letter 30 days before you intend to exercise your visitation, and you send it to the defendant, and you say, "I'm coming up from Texas on the 18th of August. I'm giving you notice that I would like to exercise my visitation on August 18th for that 48-hour period." But Ezra Masters had not done this. Instead, he had moved to Texas in June without directly notifying Chloe, the mother of his child. He claimed minimal communication, that everything was filed through the court system. A cold bureaucratic excuse that seemed to drain all the humanity and personal responsibility out of fatherhood. The plot thickened, the suspense coiling tighter as Ezra tried to deflect, to introduce a new character into the drama, Chloe's father. He claimed he had been in constant communication with the grandfather, a man now sitting in the audience, about the visitation. He spoke of conversations in June, throughout July, and right up until the weekend of August 18th, where they allegedly arranged the details. But Judge Judy was having none of it. She sliced through this weak defense with the force of a guillotine. "I don't care," she declared, her words a verbal slap. "She's the mother of your child. You should be in constant communication with her." This was the core of it, the fundamental failure. He was trying to orchestrate a relationship with his daughter through intermediaries and legal filings, avoiding the direct, difficult, but necessary communication with the child's mother. The picture Judge Judy was painting was one of a man who wanted the title and rights of a father, without the day-to-day, messy responsibilities and difficult conversations that came with it. It was at this moment of intense legal and personal scrutiny that Ezra Masters made a catastrophic error, a statement that would forever color the rest of the proceedings and reveal his true, shocking impression of this entire situation. In a stunning, almost unbelievable moment, he referred to the entire circumstance as essentially a sperm donor situation. The air in the room seemed to vanish. Judge Judy leaned forward, her expression a mask of pure, unadulterated disbelief and disapproval. Anybody that refers to himself in a situation like this as merely a sperm donor is not operating with the right brain, she pronounced, her voice laced with a contempt that was both professional and deeply personal. This was the turning point, the moment the mask slipped entirely. Here was a man suing for the expenses of a missed visitation, yet he was publicly reducing his entire role in his daughter's life to a biological, clinical, and emotionally barren transaction. The irony was thick and painful, but Ezra Masters, perhaps sensing the ground crumbling beneath his feet, tried to backtrack, to explain that this was how Chloe Martin had conducted the relationship. He launched into a frantic, somewhat desperate story, claiming he hadn't even known if he could have children, that this was a dire situation for him, and that he had been a supportive presence during the pregnancy. He painted a picture of Chloe as someone who didn't want to work, who was supported by her mother, and who had moved to Maryland, taking his potential only child with her. He revealed that he had discovered she was on welfare in California while still receiving his court-ordered $800 a month child support from Maryland, a fact that seemed to ignite a fresh wave of outrage in him. He claimed he had made hundreds of emails pleading with her to bring his daughter back, that he had traveled to Maryland 4 times to see her. He was trying to recast himself as the desperate, wronged father, fighting a manipulative system and an uncooperative mother. But Judge Judy was a master at separating relevant facts from emotional noise. She zeroed back in on the timeline, on the long periods where he had not seen his daughter, on the fact that his legal action seemed to coincide perfectly with being notified by child support authorities that they would be garnishing his wages now that Chloe was on public assistance. The motive for his sudden, fierce interest in his paternal rights suddenly seemed less about love and more about money and control. The suspense was now at its peak. Would Judge Judy find any merit in Ezra Masters' claim? Had Ms. Chloe Martin truly sabotaged the visitation? Or had Ezra simply failed to follow the very clear, legally mandated steps to make it happen? The answer came with the sharp, final crack of the gavel. "I'm not granting your application for travel expenses," Judge Judy declared, her verdict absolute. The reason was devastatingly simple and rooted in the cold, hard facts of the case. Ezra Masters had moved away, changed the primary dynamic, and then failed to give the legally required 30-day notice to the child's mother. He had tried to use an ex parte order, obtained without Chloe present, to supersede the standing Maryland order, a maneuver Judge Judy clearly saw as an underhanded attempt to circumvent his responsibilities. His communication had been with the grandfather, not the mother, a critical failure in protocol and respect. He was a man who, by his own admission, saw himself as a sperm donor. Yet he expected the courts to reward him for a trip he took under a cloud of his own making, a trip doomed to fail from the start because he hadn't done the basic, fundamental work of a real parent. He had created the circumstance of his own disappointment and then demanded someone else pay for it. The illusion of the wronged father was shattered, leaving behind the reality of an irresponsible man who wanted the law to fix a problem he himself had engineered. Lesson for the listeners and viewers. This heartbreaking case serves as a stark and powerful lesson about the profound responsibilities of parenthood, which far exceed a biological contribution or a monthly support check. Bringing a child into the world creates an unbreakable bond and a non-negotiable duty to act in that child's best interest. This means communicating directly and respectfully with the other parent, even when it is difficult. It means following court orders to the letter, not trying to find loopholes for your own convenience. It means understanding that your choices, like moving across the country, have direct and serious consequences on your relationship with your child. Most importantly, true parenthood is an emotional commitment, a daily choice to be present, engaged, and responsible. Reducing that sacred role to something as transactional and emotionally empty as a sperm donor situation reveals a fundamental misunderstanding of what it means to be a father. The law can establish rights, but it cannot manufacture respect, communication, or love. Those are the true costs of parenting, and they are far more valuable than any travel expense.